Hello, everyone. Here we are again for another Mavens Do It Better podcast, where we interview extraordinary experts that bring a light to our world. And I could not be more thrilled to have on today Jamey Edwards of Cloudbreak Health. So, hi.
Hi, how are you?
I'm terrific. Where are you coming to us today from?
I am sitting in my office in El Segundo, California.
Awesome. That's just down there from me. So,
Yeah, not too far, not too far. Like our office, just, if I pointed the camera over there, you just see the runway of LA and planes
oh,
taking
wow.
off to all sorts of great places, which affords me all sorts of good daydreaming opportunities.
That's fantastic. Yeah. Marina Del Rey is no slouch. So,
That's right. You got boats. You got
yes, it's got some
boats.
boats, some dreaming, California dreaming out there for sure.
There you
So
go.
I have to ask you about the Don't Give Up the Ship, that flag back there. Tell us about that, because it's right there, prominent and awesome. So
Yeah, as we were talking about, that flag to me is a symbol of kind of the entrepreneurial journey
yeah,
and the fact that the struggle is real. And I think we are very quick to kind of look at people who are, these companies that are out there doing great work and assume that everything is just going so great. But the fact of the matter is, every day we're dealing with very real issues, and this is a reminder to me not to give up the ship, and that what the work that we're doing is important. And so no matter what obstacles we're facing, we can either go around them, through them, above them, over them, whatever it might be. But that's my daily reminder.
yeah, it's awesome. And I love the logo treatment on that. It reminds me of that, keep calm and carry on, sort of that English
Exactly.
design, Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So these were actually flown on the back of a sailing ship up in the Pacific Northwest, and the guy, comes up with these things and flies them off there to give them that, nice weathered and
Yeah.
authentic,
Yeah.
look. And
It's fabulous.
we have a bunch of flags around the office here, and this
Okay.
was the one that I wanted over the back of my desk.
Yeah, it's wonderful. That's so cool. So Cloudbreak Health, just
Yeah.
wow, disruptive, amazing, innovative, all of that. Will you tell our listeners a little bit about Cloudbreak, the elevator pitch, and where it got started? You are CEO and co-founder as well.
Yes. So Cloudbreak is a unified telemedicine company that provides services in over 1,200 hospitals across the United States. And 85,000 times a month, we beam in a resource to those facilities, over 10,000 different video endpoints. And so the core thing that we do is really bringing language interpreters to the point of care for the deaf and hard of hearing and limited English proficient. That's really how the company got started.
Okay.
But we really classify ourselves as a healthcare disparity solutions business. And
Wow.
so we realized that once we had solved this initial disparity of how we can help limited English proficient and deaf patients receive the same standard of care as their English speaking counterparts, that we could do more with the platform when these screens were dark. It was like a Bugs Bunny, Porky Pig type thing.
Ow!
Yeah, exactly. When the screens were dark, there was more that we could do, and we had built this private broadband network into all these facilities.
Wow.
And so we started having hospitals ask us to build out new use cases. And so now we're doing telepsychiatry, telestroke, and really the system can be customized to bring any resource to the point of care that's needed to help solve a disparity.
Wow. First of all, thank you. That's amazing. What a great thing you're bringing. How did you get started in healthcare? So you had it.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
that's how much time do we have?
Well, we'll see. Yeah.
I'll try and give you the short version of it. But the
Okay.
first 10 years of my career was actually investment banking and private equity.
Okay.
I wanted to learn that side of the business because I took an entrepreneurship class when I was in college at Cornell
For now, right.
from this esteemed professor, Professor David Ben Daniel. And he taught me about how entrepreneurship is all about taking an idea and making it real and having an impact, and that really resonated with me. But what I realized was, this was during like the time of Enron and all these financial scandals. I was like, I
Yep.
never want to be in a position where I'm relying on someone to teach me, to tell me what's happening in the business.
Right.
And so I became an investment banker, and that was amazing training. It was a
Wow.
chance to kind of like drink from a fire hose in terms of
Mhm.
information. It was a great chance to see companies do it right and do it wrong.
Yeah.
Well, while I was doing this, I came from a family of doctors, and my aunts and
Uh-huh.
uncles on both sides are physicians. My sister is a doctor. My brother-in-law is a doctor. So I was always surrounded by healthcare.
Right.
And my favorite uncle, a guy named Dr. Irv Edwards, had founded an ER business in Southern California called Emergent Medical Associates. And
Okay.
he had run it for a few years and asked me to come join him full time because I had done some consulting for him. And as you can
Okay.
imagine, very easy for me to impress my physician uncle
Yeah.
with my
Right.
knowledge of revenue, EBITDA, cash flow,
Yes.
PowerPoint, Excel, all these different, awesome business tools that we learned.
Right.
And so I had helped him move out of his home office to a real office. I had built a lot of his infrastructure, and software tools. And so he said, "Hey, I need you to come run the business full time." And I joined the
Wow.
company when it was about 12 million in revenue. And over the course of the next 8 or 9 years, we grew it to around 150 million of revenue into a leading group in the
Okay.
Southwest that
Yeah.
competed against Team Health and Envision and big,
Okay.
physician outsourcing groups like that. And we did
Right.
ER, hospitalist and anesthesia medicine. But while I was doing that, I'd come across a company called the Language Access Network. And the founder of the company, Andy Panos, who founded the original predecessor to company, the Cloudbreak in 2003, was really the founder of the video medical interpreting industry in our country.
Ah, okay.
And so he was the first guy to bring an interpreter in and beam him to the point of care over a telemedicine platform. And
Wow.
we ended up meeting and becoming fast friends. And I became enamored with his business. I actually helped him with his investor deck, and through that learned a lot about his company. And we engineered a deal where he was in a public shell at that point in time. So we pulled his company out of the public shell, took it private, and then proceeded to grow it. And so for 6 years, I was running Language Access Network and Emergent Medical Associates side by side. Language Access Network was reaching escape velocity. So we did a
Yeah.
Series A financing round with Kane Partners, who's been our private equity partner
Okay.
since 2015. And we've grown the business kind of 3x since that period of time. And I am now full-time, running this business. And when we did the Kane deal, we rebranded the company as Cloudbreak Health and really refounded it because we
Mhm.
realized that there was more for us to do besides just language services.
Right. Absolutely. Wow. You've had an amazing career, and you're a busy man.
Definitely busy. Some might say entrepreneurially ADD. I've heard that
Yeah.
before.
Yeah.
But I love this kind of concept of, I love the creation process. It's
Right.
just really
Yeah.
what does it for me.
Absolutely. I mean, I came across some telehealth with a friend that worked with me. She was
Okay.
a doctor in Sebastopol, California. I used to live up
Okay.
there in Sonoma County, and there was
Yeah.
a doctor she was working for that was sort of very high up in dealing with strokes, and
Yep.
that was some of the first times I'd ever heard of that a few years ago. And I, tell us again how many people you've served, because I think
Oh,
that's
well,
important.
right now it's kind of north of 1 million people a year now. So if
Wow.
you take a look at over the course of the company's history, I mean, we're talking
Yeah.
millions and millions of people that have been touched by the platform. And,
Yeah.
I love actually walking through our telemedicine centers and
Mhm.
hearing all the different languages being spoken, hearing those
Right.
integrated with a telemedicine call, and
Yeah.
understanding that on the other end of that screen, right, there's someone who's scared, who doesn't
Yeah.
speak the language, or who
Right.
is having a stroke, whatever the case might be, or,
Yeah.
going through a mental health issue.
Right.
And the platform's helping them navigate that in one of the scariest times of their lives, which is when they're actually in a hospital, in a clinic, or an urgent care center.
Yeah.
And that's pretty powerful for us. It's really what gets us out of bed every
Yeah,
morning.
absolutely. I was gonna say, if you don't have a personal why, there you go, right? And
Yeah, that's right.
I know you do, but you know what I
That's
mean.
right.
But like you just told us, so that's great. Yeah, and as far as gosh, the investment and the entrepreneurial bug, and you were surrounded by doctors your entire life. It kind of makes
Yeah,
sense that you got into healthcare.
yeah,
I
it
mean,
does,
around
right?
the dinner table, you're hearing all of that from your folks and family, right?
Yeah, I mean, I have to tell you, I had no idea what the opportunity was in healthcare. Healthcare to me was always kind of scary from an entrepreneurship standpoint, right? It's
Sure.
highly
Yeah.
regulated, highly risk
Right.
averse, big, huge health systems that typically have been
Mhm.
thought of as very bureaucratic. And I
Right.
think that keeps a lot of people out of the healthcare entrepreneurship game, if you will.
Right.
And but when you get in here and you build your expertise and you realize that healthcare, a lot of it is driving change from the inside out and
Sure.
being able to build consensus in a different way. Like we just can't put an app out there and expect it to work. We've got to
Right.
train people, get buy-in, a lot of times do, evidation type of studies.
Mhm.
And it is a little bit different of a market. And I'm almost pained to say it because I'm always out in the field being like, look, healthcare's not different. If they can do this in, entertainment, we can do it in healthcare. If they can do
Right.
it in manufacturing, we can do it in healthcare. But
Sure.
you do need to have a certain knowledge base to make things successful in a healthcare environment.
Absolutely. And I know that there was iterations of the business and of the technology. So but where did that sort of the actual tech of the business, where did that get started, and how did you iterate on that?
Yeah, the tech actually got started in and around that language services use case. So
Okay.
we started experimenting with a slew of different platforms, from Cisco to Vidwaya to Polycom
Mm.
to Skype for Business. And
Right.
we realized that we didn't want to just be on one of them. We wanted to be on all of them. And
Sure.
so We developed a standards-based video solution that would be video interoperable with that and Zoom and other platforms that are out there. Zoom is actually taking off these days as one of the platforms in market.
Yep.
But we realized you needed to do more than just bring, the video into a call. You needed to surround it with workflow. You need to really work on, the UI UX part of it and create a user experience for both clinician and patient that was highly, highly functional and engaging. And I would say even fun. Like I'm not, in healthcare, fun is sometimes an evil word, but I'm going to say make the tech fun.
PHUN. Okay.
Exactly. Exactly. And so that we really evolved everything off this initial language services use case. And the cool thing about the language services use case is it's really the gateway telemedicine drug. It's the one use case that's throughout the entire hospital.
Right.
And so whether you're in labor and delivery or whether you're at admitting and registration, that patient journey throughout the institution requires language services. And so a lot of companies started off with one use case, and that use case was stroke. Okay, great. So you're in the emergency department, but you're nowhere else. Or you're doing mental health. Great. You're in, or you're doing ICU. Well, that's only in the ICU. So language services was really the Trojan horse, if you will, that allowed us to get 10,000 plus video endpoints in the field. And there's some companies that inspire us out there, like In Touch Health, who has more hospitals than we do, and we've been following those guys pretty closely and are super impressed by their platform. They have 4,000 video endpoints to our 10,000, so it kind of gives an idea of the power of this language services use case.
Yeah, and how do hospitals? I mean, I'm you're doing marketing. Obviously, you're getting out there and talking about this stuff. I'm sure you're speaking. You're a member of HIMSS, of course.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. I've been to HIMSS before. I went with a cybersecurity company. I was impressed with the size of that show.
Yes, HIMSS is I think there was just a quote that I had it's a center of gravity, right?
Yeah.
You show up to HIMSS and everybody that you need to speak to is there.
Yeah.
And it's not just a conference. It's really, if you take a look at the HIMSS educational curriculum, it's really surrounded on improving healthcare with tech, but there's a lot of like non-tech driven healthcare improvement stuff that HIMSS does. And so, the name, health information management side, right? I mean, that is almost misleading what the conference actually is, which is a center of innovation and collaboration in healthcare.
Yeah, when I really liked about the setups, I did event planning for years and years for Microsoft, right? And so
imagine what it's like to pull off a conference like that.
Yeah, right. And building booths and all of that. And I really loved a lot of the hands-on stuff from folks where you could go in, touch the tech, see how it works and all that sort of thing. So that was a really cool thing. Yeah, I liked HIMSS a lot.
Yeah, I find it like very invigorating because I'll show up to a conference like that, and not only do I get to see everyone that I haven't seen since the last major conference, since JP Morgan or Startup Health or whatever it is. It's like one of the reasons I love to go to conferences, to see everyone in person again and get kind of my conference family back together.
Yeah. It's old home week, right? You're like,
that's
hey,
right.
buddy, what's up?
That's right. But it's also to see kind of the macro view of what's happening in healthcare at any time. There are years at HIMSS where like AI was in vogue, and then it's telemedicine, and then it's XYZ, and it might be chatbots, it might be whatever, but you can really get a sense for how the technology is evolving by walking that exhibit floor.
Yeah, absolutely. I think sometimes healthcare gets a little bit of a rap of being behind in tech. There's even our financial services institutions and utilities and stuff, some of the most important things kind of in our world to keep us safe and happy and all of that stuff.
Absolutely.
But, so I think, being innovative and hopefully inspiring others, I think Cloudbreak's doing that in twofold for sure, right?
Well, we try, and, we kind of joke around at HIMSS a little bit that, the larger the booth a startup has, the more likely they're not to be around in a year, kind of thing. But we're there to have meetings. Clearly, the established companies have large booths, but it's interesting to see the evolution of who is out there, kind of trying to make a splash and tell their story. But there's always something really neat that you end up discovering. I think it's cool to see the different companies that have evolved to be at HIMSS, like Uber and Amazon. It's cool to see some of those companies, in the mix, in Google Cloud and all those types of things, to see what their goals are in healthcare.
Yeah, absolutely. I was looking through Twitter and hashtags and all that fun sort of stuff. And you want to lift your foot up? I don't know.
I didn't wear them today, but I have them right here.
Hey, look at that. So, you know what's so funny? I have a pair of those socks. Who
gave you yours?
I bought them for myself a while ago.
Oh my God, we have to gift you the original article. I'm making myself a note right now. Pink socks.
I think it was, remember when the finger stash was in vogue?
Yeah.
Remember?
Yeah.
And people were actually getting it tattooed on
Yes, it
their
was like right
finger,
there.
like right
Yeah.
there. So that
Yeah.
I think like there was the twisty mustache phase that happened, I don't know, probably 5 or 6 years ago. And I think it was in the midst of that. Plus, I'm from the Midwest and my uncles all had big twisty 70s mustaches back in the
I'm
day.
super
So
jealous of that. That's
big
pretty
fan.
cool.
Yeah. So will you tell everybody about pink socks? Because it's so neat.
Yeah, so the pink socks is really a movement, and it's pretty incredible. A guy named Nick Adkins and his
Mhm.
partner Andrew Richards started Pink Socks just as kind of a lark. Nick had gone to Burning Man and
I'm a
really bought
burner.
it. Oh, there you go, there you go, and really
Yep.
bought into kind of all the different principles of Burning Man. One of which was radical gifting,
Yep.
right?
Cool.
And so this concept of gifting he came back with, besides swapping out his pants for a kilt, which is now his trademark, item. If you see him walking around a conference, you can spot Nick anywhere because he's got
Yeah.
his pink socks on and kilt and a
Oh,
fedora,
right.
and a big beard.
Yep.
So
Mhm.
he's representing the pink socks brand in that way. But he basically came back and just started gifting these socks out, actually out of hymns, right?
Wow.
Segue
Okay.
wise.
Yeah.
And I think Eric Topol and some leaders and Jerome Toss from Phillips, they had been given these socks, and initially it was just like, hey, I just wanted to brighten your day. Then you started to see more people wearing them, and they started to become a conversation piece.
Yeah.
And then the people who were wearing them were really centered around healthcare innovation, and
Sure.
you started to see chief innovation officers wearing them, and now 40,000 pairs of these socks.
Wow.
And actually, I think it might be 60,000 now because Nick corrected me the last time. So I'm going to go
It's
with
like, uh-oh.
60,000. Yeah, have been given around the
Wow.
world globally,
That's amazing.
right? And think about that. They're just gifted. And
Yeah.
the Pink Socks movement has started, and the movement's all about kindness and,
Yeah.
making someone's day. And you can walk around a conference and be like, hey, nice socks. And it's an opportunity to connect with someone.
Yeah.
And that was really the genesis of it. And a month ago or two ago, we actually started doing Pink Socks givings in schools. And there was a
Oh,
school in El Paso that built a kindness curriculum around the pink socks for their students. So imagine
wow.
the power of that at that age, to walk out and realize kindness is important and the way we treat each other is important. And now
Yeah.
Pink Socks has become a vehicle for things like that.
That's amazing. Yeah. And there's a TED talk about it. Is that right as well?
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
he did a TEDx talk. Yeah.
Okay, absolutely. Yeah, that's so cool. I was so excited to see that. And there was a gal on that was wishing someone a happy 105th birthday this
Yeah.
week. And I was like, okay, I want to get in on this. I was like, that
Yeah.
is fantastic,
It's literally taken on a life of its own. And the Pink Socks is looking for donations to do more school events and things like that, and the website's pinksocks.life if anyone wants to check
Yes.
it out.
Awesome.
Quite frankly, it's like, get some of the socks and just gift them out. It's
Yeah.
amazing the conversations that happen. I had a woman, I was wearing the socks, and I was in a restaurant in Dana Point, California,
Uh-huh.
and a woman came up to me. I'm going to step out of screen for 1 second. A woman came up to me and she said, I love your socks. And I was like, oh my God. She's like, and I wanted to give you my sunglasses. So here I am wearing my socks so I can gift them to other people.
What?
So this woman, you know, not
Yeah.
my style, but was kind enough to like gift these to me. And so I ended up sending
Yeah.
her some socks for her and some of her friends after the fact. But that's the whole point. We all need to
Yeah.
realize that we're in this together. And to me, that's what the pink
Absolutely.
socks symbolize.
Yeah, absolutely. And the 10 Burning Man principles, one being radical gifting is that's it. I often when I'm there and other times, I've just given things to people off, I'm like,
Yeah.
what? I've had gotten a lot of joy out of this and maybe it's time to bring some joy to somebody else. So,
Absolutely,
you know,
absolutely, and kind of you start to realize that selfishly, it's kind of like giving makes you happy,
yeah, for
right?
sure. Yeah.
And so from that article, like gifting is one of the most selfish things we could possibly do, right?
Yes, exactly. So where are you from exactly? Are you a New Yorker or what's
I'm
the
not a New Yorker, but I am from
Okay.
Western New York. I grew up in Buffalo, New York.
Oh, Buffalo. Okay.
Yeah, so I'm a Western New Yorker, and I was born
Yeah.
in Cleveland, but Buffalo, New York is kind of where I remember all of my childhood memories. I lived there from fifth grade on.
Yeah.
I'm a Cornell undergrad, Cornell
Yep.
grad,
Okay.
so I did spend some time in Manhattan during
Yeah.
my investment banking years. But LA is home,
Yeah.
and
Okay.
I love it here. And this the West Coast lifestyle. It's like clearly not a best kept secret anymore given
Yeah.
traffic out here, but there's not a day I don't go home that I'm like not grateful to be kind of, on this coast and
Yeah.
have my
Yeah.
kids. I have a 10-year-old and I'm sorry, an 11-year-old and a 9-year-old now.
Yep.
And they get to be outside. I don't even think they know how good they have it.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. When there's snow up to the,
That's
wherever
right.
else. Yeah,
That's right. I
absolutely.
kind
I
of
know.
miss that first snowfall. I
Yeah.
miss fall, autumn leaves, right? And that first day
Mhm.
of spring. But besides that,
Yeah. It's all
I'm
right.
good. I'm good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you mentioned family and
Yes.
you've got a lot going on. With our listeners, we talk about wellness and self-care and stuff.
Yeah.
How do you do that for yourself?
This is going to give away my kind of West Coast juju, if you will. I've started meditating. Right. I've
Okay.
found that kind
Yes.
of mindfulness to be a really good practice. And I've
Yeah.
actually started meditating with my daughter every night before she goes
Ah,
to bed,
that's
which is
awesome.
super cute. Although now
Yeah.
she can't go to bed without meditating. So it's
Oh,
kind of like become part of her daily practice. So
right.
sometimes I'm traveling on a trip and I need to meditate remotely with her.
Yep.
So that's really helpful. I think being outdoors, taking hikes and doing that. I coach
Yeah.
my kids' soccer team. So I always try and make sure
Mhm.
I'm as present as I can be because I think it's very
Right.
easy to get caught up with how much work there is to
Yeah.
do.
Right.
And there's a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
But the work is always there, whether you plow through it or not. So I
Yeah.
try and like balance that out with family. And, even on my LinkedIn feed, I say, father, husband, founder. And it's kind
Yes.
of, that's the order for me
Yeah.
of, how I want to live my life.
Yeah, absolutely. So for those on the listening, for you've been an entrepreneur, or you
Yep.
are not come up as an entrepreneur, you are one, investment banker, all of that. Couple of, if you were like, I want to give one piece of advice out to folks,
Ooh,
or maybe two, I don't know, but
one sage piece of
one
advice.
sage piece of advice.
Yeah, well, I think one would be people tend to ask, why me? And I think people need to
Mm,
ask more, why not me? Right?
right,
As an entrepreneur, there are a ton of reasons why you can't pursue something.
right.
And I like to always say, I always search for the one or two reasons why something will work as opposed to the 100 reasons why it won't.
Fair enough.
And so for me, like that's like my key piece of advice. Like, why should you be watching someone else live the life you want to lead or build the product you want to
Right.
build? Like,
Yeah.
why shouldn't it be you who does that?
Hmm.
And there are many opportunities that I've had learning lessons from this where I've written a business plan or I have jotted down an idea. I mean, how many of like raise your hand out there in podcast land if you ever had an idea and you saw someone execute, and you're like, oh, I thought about that.
Right.
Like those words get said millions of times across the United States, but one person actually said,
Yeah.
I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
And I think there's a certain power in being like, why not me? Why shouldn't I be the person to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a sort of a trend in marketing right now that I keep seeing, and there's this role of storyteller and
Yes.
storytelling, and I'm so happy that like there's jobs that say chief storyteller
Yep.
on LinkedIn right now. Do you have a chief storyteller? Is that you or
I try and empower all of us in the company to
yeah,
be storytellers. Storytelling is a big part of what I think has made me successful in my career.
yeah,
Because if you want to build a great business that you want employees to be a part of, well, you
yeah,
need to tell them a story that is engaging for them and that's based on a mission and a culture that they want to be a part of. If you
right,
want your clients, if you want to be the employer of choice and the partner of choice, like that's all storytelling. You need to
yeah,
create a company that has a story that people want to be a part of.
yeah,
And so for me, yeah, I mean, storytelling is incredibly powerful. It's the difference of showing someone a spreadsheet with numbers on it, or
mm,
going through and walking them through those numbers and saying what they all mean and talking about the value of it. And
right.
different people tell stories in different ways, but that storytelling to me is a key part of what makes someone successful in business.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's interesting that your way that you've traversed in your career, so many, like we were talking about, all these ideas and ideas that may not have been, realized, or I could have done that, or I had that idea. And
Yep.
I found, so I had a theater company in Seattle. I was a theater major back in the day. And so
Okay.
a bunch of us had a theater company in Seattle, and it was sort of the late 90s, early 2000s. And, we had to have our own theater company.
That
We
was
had,
during like Pearl Jam's heyday.
oh, I was in college during the grunge movement, and it was
Holy
I
smokes, that
snuck
had to be
into I
incredible.
snuck into every club before I was 21. I saw Mother Love Bone and all those wonderful,
Everything from the
you know,
single soundtrack, right?
yeah, totally. And those
Yeah.
guys with the rockin' hair who were so angry and cute, it was so great. I was like, this is the best. Thanks, Dad.
Yeah.
Good timing. Um, but we had the company, and we had to have our own, though. It was like we had to have our own identity, and then we had to do our own
Right.
books and our own marketing and all this stuff. And there were a ton of companies, little fringe companies, that were doing the same thing. You know what we were doing? We were fighting for audience, we were fighting for space, we were
Yep.
fighting for attention and all of that stuff. And to me, sometimes taking a step back and saying, who's doing something that is already in bloom, and hooking up with them, it seems to me that's sort of what happened with you. And I don't know, that seems to me, people don't always stop and go, well, who else out there is doing something cool that
Right.
maybe I could be a part of,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean,
I couldn't agree with that more. I mean, I think a lot of building a company and even building a career is about being opportunistic,
yeah,
right?
right.
And it's, how many times have you looked back at your life decisions and you're like, well, that wasn't as big a deal as I thought it was. Like, I'm
Yeah,
leaving this place and I'm going on
right.
to my next thing. Like, you think that is at that point in time, you're like, well, I don't know if I could leave. I really like my bosses and this is my career, and God, what
Yeah,
happens next? And we're always worried about what we can't see beyond walking out
yeah,
that door.
right.
Um, but for me, it was like, that is not, I've never been risk averse to that. Like, I
Yeah,
remember leaving my banking job and people being like, what are you doing?
right.
Like, you're going to give this up? And I'm like, yeah, yeah, yeah. I learned what I wanted to learn. This
Yeah.
has been an amazing experience. I worked with wonderful people on great deals. I got to work on Google's IPO and follow on and do a bunch of
Uh-huh.
fun stuff like that. But like, I was ready for the next step and people thought I was an idiot, but like, here I am today, like, just, and my path definitely wasn't, you know, it
Yeah, yeah,
was all around the corners and around the
yeah,
bend
yeah,
and over the
yeah,
creek and through the woods and all that type of stuff. But it's been great and it's made me who I am. So I think being able to attach yourself, like, that's how you learn. Like, if I didn't,
yeah.
I actually worked at Lehman Brothers, right? And so
Mhm.
having my time there and attaching myself to a place that did something really, really well, even though one part of it had the real estate issues, um, I learned a tremendous amount,
Right.
and I got to prove to myself that I could do certain things that I didn't know that I could do,
Yeah.
and I learned from the best. And so I think there's something about, if you see someone out there who's doing something really well and either partnering
Yep.
or emulating,
Mhm.
there's nothing wrong with that. Like, you can still be authentic and original by using other people's best practices.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes it's your ship, sometimes it's somebody else's ship, but the ride's still good, right?
That's right. That's right. I love that. I might steal that from you. I love
Yeah,
that.
absolutely. It's all good. It's all
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, but you know
Yeah.
what? It's kind of like, those are the things, we talked about storytelling. Like, those
Yeah.
stories are what make us human and they're what
Yeah.
allow us to connect. Like, without them, they're the glue that hold us all together. And so when you think about it, if one of our partners today is, we're partnering with Amazon, and
Mhm.
that is a relatively new partnership for us, but we're learning things from them every day, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, well, and that's being open, and that's that entrepreneurship spirit, I think, as well. But yeah, I keep seeing sometimes where I'm like, oh, this person's creating something brand new, and I'm like, well, don't you that over there, they're doing it too. Like, won't you,
Right.
just, get over there with them. So yeah.
Yeah, to this point, I was reading an article on creativity, and one
Hmm.
of the things they talked about was that when you're a creative person, free association is
Mm,
a key part of that creativity. And
yeah,
so it's asking the questions why and what if, and
right.
oh, what if, you know, it sounds silly, right? But what if Amazon and Walmart merged? Like, asking that question, like, is
Sure.
part of what being creative is, all about, and figuring out how markets are going to play out and what types
Yeah,
of products you can create. Well, what
yeah,
if we could be the people to solve that problem instead of them, right?
yeah,
So
absolutely.
I think that's one of the powers of it.
Yeah. So you have a big year ahead, I'm sure. We're roaring into the 20s, a new decade. I'll do that for you too.
Yeah,
So
big
of
year
course,
ahead.
whoop, whoop.
Yeah.
Can you share maybe either say a personal goal or a goal for the business that you're like, okay, this is where we're going to go reach for?
Yeah, look, I mean, we had Cloudbreak. I'd like to tell you that we've had, hockey stick growth the whole time, but
Hmm.
that's just not what growing a business is. And
Yeah.
so for me, this is a growth year. Like, I want to reignite our growth engine in a really big way. And I don't know
Yep.
how you felt, but I felt like 18 and 19 were kind of like funky years.
Yeah. I'm
right?
with
Like
you.
15 and 16, 17, I'm like, oh, we're growing. This is awesome. Everything's great. But
Yeah.
18 and 19 were kind of funky years. And I'm in a group called YPO, which is the Young Presidents
Yeah.
Organization. And it's a group of
Mhm.
other CEOs and presidents who run companies. And I kind of feel like in talking to them, everyone felt 18 and 19 were really just strange years.
Yeah.
Deals not getting done for certain reasons, or
Yeah.
strange things happening, like where you're waiting for
Mhm.
like, random occurrences like
Yeah.
fires, or like we actually had one of our buildings
Oh.
not collapse, but fall like 3 inches. Like, how does that happen?
Wow.
Right. So we had
Okay.
to like clear out our call center and get a new call center fired up in
Right.
3 days and do all these different, those were the types of things that were happening in 18 and 19. So
Mhm. Yeah.
2020, the year of clear vision, as I like to call it,
Yes.
or the year of clarity. Like like we are going into 2020 hot right now. We've just signed a bunch of new contracts and things are
Okay.
really moving in our direction. So,
Cool.
yeah, we're hoping to grow the business. And personally, I'm hoping to work out a little bit more. I got to be honest. Like
Yeah.
that's like New Year's resolution type of stuff, but
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm looking to work out a little bit more and eat a little healthier.
Yeah. That there's someone who said that self-care and self-love is the gift that we not only give to ourselves, but it's the gift that we give to everyone in our lives in the
I
world.
love that.
And I love thinking about it that way when I'm like, should I eat this? You know, or
Right,
whatever.
right.
Or
Well, you know what?
should I go to the gym that's right there, literally in my
Right.
apartment building?
Yeah, and by
Yes.
the way, I have like a huge, I have a sugar issue, let's put it that way. And so I have
Oh,
like little things of cookies around and Dove chocolates over there and all sorts of stuff like that, which are
yeah.
like my little guilty pleasures.
Yeah,
But
absolutely. Which
you
are
mentioned the
good.
thing of, yeah,
But
you mentioned the thing about self-care being the gift that we give to others. So we're a startup health company, and
yeah,
startup health is one of the biggest incubators out there. And
yeah.
they have their mindsets, and
Mhm.
they've talked about frequently
Mm,
how you can't be the best you can be for everybody else if you're not taking care of yourself. It's one of like the main points
yeah.
that they talk about is that as an entrepreneur, it's easy to forsake going to the gym and work the late hours and eat badly and do all these because you feel like you're sacrificing for everyone.
Uh-huh.
But the best thing you can do to run your business and to be able to take care of everyone and take care of your employees is to take care of yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
Yeah.
we ascribe to that.
Yeah, I dig it. So, last question.
Fire away.
Thank you for this. So fun. It's
No,
so
this
good
was
to
a
talk
blast. I
to
feel
you.
like we could keep this going for like
I
another hour
know.
or
I know.
two.
I was like, I got all kinds of stuff to ask you about. I'm gonna have to come down to El Segundo and say hi. So,
We can do that. We can do
yeah.
that. We'll grab lunch.
Okay, that would be awesome.
I can give you your
So,
socks in person.
oh my goodness. Okay, deal, deal, deal.
Okay.
I love it.
All
Okay,
right.
cool.
Cool.
So I'm very interested in moments and sparks in our
Yep.
lives, and
Yep.
so I ask every listener. Well, I sort of am asking every listener to ask that question of themselves, but
There you go.
ask every guest, what spark or moment, person, place, thing, moment, seats you where you are right now today.
God, when I look back, I'm 45 now. So when I look back
Yeah.
on it, I would say the seminal moment for me, because it led to me being in this entrepreneurship class, was getting my acceptance letter to Cornell
Ah.
when I was in high school.
Yeah.
And the reason I say that is because I was a good student, but not a great student. And my
Mhm.
SAT scores were strong, but not awesome.
Right.
And I worked really hard to position myself to get into
Mhm.
school. I had gone to Cornell for a summer camp, and I fell in love with it. And I'm like, it just felt
Ah.
like the place I needed to be and the place
Right.
where I was going to grow and
Sure.
expand. And like, it was the next chapter that I really wanted.
Mm.
So, I applied to the School of Industrial and Labor Relations there. I did an internship with a union. I thought I wanted to be a change management consultant. And
Oh.
I spent a lot of time writing these like amazing essays that really showed who I was. And you know
Mm.
what? I think Cornell took a chance on me as a result of
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And when I got that letter, I just felt like my whole life was rolling out in front of me. And
Yeah.
it kind of did. I loved being at school.
Mhm.
It was an amazing time of growth for me. And I remember going to Professor Ben Daniel's entrepreneurship and personal
Right.
enterprise class
Uh-huh.
where I wrote this first business plan. And that's when I really got hooked on what I wanted to do with the rest of my
Mhm.
life and realized that if I really wanted to impact people, that I could actually take an idea out of my head, make it into something real and have it be valuable for someone and impact the world in a positive way. And for me, that was like, that's my drug,
Yeah.
like that creative
Mhm.
process of, being the guy who says, well, what if we did do this? And why
Right.
don't we just do it? Because, we'll figure it out as we go along. And if you
Yeah.
take a look at a lot of the best companies that are out there, they didn't end up where they were as a result of sticking to their plan. They figured it out as they went along. And I
Yeah.
think, but that to me is the great thing. Again, you stand in the middle of our call centers and you hear all the people that we're helping every day, and that started off as someone's idea that they plucked out of their head and
Mhm.
made real.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of the things I love about working in technology or in business. It's like everything starts with an idea from right up here, a cocktail napkin, or that thing that just
Exactly.
somebody bloops out. So yeah, thank you. And thank you, Cornell Admissions.
Thank
So
you, Cornell Admissions. Cornell has become like my biggest philanthropy as a
oh,
result. So I believe in the power of education, and
yeah,
I get back up to campus to speak to the students, and all those
that's
different types of
awesome.
things. Yeah,
Oh, that's so great.
yeah.
Thank you. Thank
No,
you
thank
for
you.
thank you for sharing your story and being on today. You're awesome. So
No, this was
yeah,
great. Thank you for the opportunity, and this
yeah.
is by far one of the best interviews I've ever done. I mean, this has
Oh,
been awesome, and I love
thanks.
the conversation dialogue, and I'll look forward to meeting you in person soon.
Yeah, I know. I can't wait. I know. I was looking at everyone on the podcast. It's I'd come across you on Twitter and then on
Yep,
Forbes Business Council stuff and
yep,
everything. And so I was just like, I was reading about. I was like, we need to talk. So you're a
yes. Well, I'm glad. I'm so happy that you
healthcare,
reached out. This was amazing.
yeah, healthcare maven for sure.
There you go. There we go.
Wonderful. All right, thank you, Jamey. I appreciate
All
it.
right, thank you. I appreciate the time.
Absolutely. Well,
All
there
right.
we go, folks. We just had another episode of the Mavens Do It Better podcast where and here is to another beautiful day on this big blue spinning sphere. Thanks everybody. Bye.